The morning was bright and warm, with sunlight spilling through the large windows of the school lobby. The hall was quiet except for the faint sound of footsteps on the polished floor. Students hurried past, some carrying books, some chatting with friends, but there was one corner of the lobby that often went unnoticed, where a grand piano stood near the wall. Dust covered it in places, and a small sign reminded people not to touch it. The janitor, a quiet man who usually moved through the building like a shadow, had a soft spot for that piano. He would often pass by it, glancing at the keys as if he were waiting for the right moment. She entered the lobby with her usual energy, her laughter ringing through the air. She had a mischievous smile, one that could make people uneasy and curious at the same time. She liked to tease, to see reactions, and she had a way of making everyone notice her. That morning, she felt bored and wanted to stir up some excitement. As she walked past the janitor, who was mopping the floor near the piano, she noticed his quiet, calm demeanor. It was different from everyone else around him. Most people barely noticed him, but she did. She decided for fun to test him. "Bind me," she said loudly, grinning, as if she were daring him to react. A few students nearby turned to see what she was doing. The janitor looked up for a moment, his face unreadable, then went back to his work. She laughed softly, not expecting him to respond. She liked the game of seeing how people reacted to her teasing, and he seemed like the perfect target. She moved closer, her steps light but deliberate. "Come on, don't just stand there. Show me something," she said, waving her hands. Other students started to gather, curious about the exchange. It was unusual to see someone challenge the janitor, who usually blended into the background. He looked up again, his eyes calm and steady. There was something about him that made her pause for a fraction of a second. He didn't seem annoyed or embarrassed. He seemed patient. She wasn't used to that. Most people reacted immediately, either laughing or getting angry, but he stayed quiet, almost like he was thinking. She circled around him playfully, as if she were hunting for a reaction. "Don't tell me you're scared. Are you scared?" she teased, her voice light but sharp. The students watching whispered among themselves. Some laughed quietly, enjoying the spectacle, while others were curious to see how he would respond. He didn't flinch, didn't even smile. He simply set the mop aside and slowly walked toward the piano. There was a calmness in his movements, a confidence that was unexpected. She stopped for a moment, surprised. He wasn't running away. He wasn't ignoring her. He was moving toward the piano, and she felt a strange mix of anticipation and uncertainty. The janitor's hands hovered over the keys for a moment. She expected silence, perhaps a few random notes, maybe even an awkward mistake. But then he pressed the keys gently, one after the other, producing a sound that was soft and steady. Her teasing faltered slightly as she realized this was not going to be ordinary. The music started simple, almost like he was warming up, but it had a clarity that immediately caught the attention of everyone around. She leaned forward, curious, trying to hide the flicker of surprise in her expression. He continued to play, each note flowing into the next, smooth and confident. The sound filled the lobby, and suddenly, the atmosphere changed. The students who had been whispering and giggling stopped. The chatter faded as the music took over. Even she, who loved to be the center of attention, felt herself drawn in. The teasing words she had just spoken felt silly in comparison to what was happening. She watched his hands move across the keys with precision and ease. There was no rush, no hesitation, just a natural command of the instrument. It was mesmerizing. The janitor's eyes were closed as he played, and for a moment, it was as if he was in another world. The music rose and fell, gentle and powerful at the same time. It carried emotion, a story that didn't need words. She felt a strange mix of emotions herself. Awe, curiosity, and even a little guilt. She had come here to tease, to provoke a reaction, but instead, she was witnessing something extraordinary. The music seemed to touch everyone in the lobby. Some students had their eyes closed, letting the sound wash over them. Others watched silently, mouths slightly open in surprise. She took a step closer, her usual boldness tempered by fascination. She realized she had never paid attention to him before. He had always been there, moving quietly, unnoticed, but she had no idea he possessed this talent. It was a humbling moment. Her teasing smile faded, replaced by genuine interest. She wondered how many other people in the world had hidden talents that went unnoticed, talents that only appeared when someone dared to look closer. As the music continued, she noticed small details. The way his fingers moved so fluidly, the subtle shifts in tempo, the gentle pauses that added depth to the performance. It wasn't just skill. It was passion. It was clear he loved what he was doing. The janitor, who had always seemed ordinary to her, was revealing a side of himself that few had ever seen. She felt a sense of respect growing inside her, slowly replacing the playful challenge she had started with. The performance went on, and the lobby seemed to shrink around the sound. Even the usual noise of footsteps and voices had disappeared, replaced entirely by the music. She realized that she had underestimated him, as she had often underestimated others. Her teasing felt insignificant now, almost inappropriate, in the face of something so beautiful. She had expected nothing, and yet she was witnessing everything. There was a lesson here she hadn't expected to learn today. When he finally finished, there was a brief silence, as if the world was holding its breath. Then, slowly, the students began to clap, softly at first, then louder, filled with genuine appreciation. She joined in, her hands meeting in applause, but she kept her eyes on him. He opened his eyes and gave a small, almost shy nod. There was no pride or arrogance, only quiet satisfaction. He had shared a part of himself without fanfare, without demand, and the impact was undeniable. She felt a smile spread across her face, different from the teasing one she had started with. It was a smile of understanding, of recognition. She realized that people were often more than they seemed. The janitor, quiet and unassuming, had revealed a depth she had never imagined. She felt a sense of humility, a rare feeling for her, as she acknowledged the talent and the courage it took to reveal it. She wondered how many times she had overlooked people, judging them by appearances or by their quietness. The janitor stepped away from the piano, returning the room to its usual stillness. She felt a strange emptiness as the music faded, a longing to hear more, to understand more. But she also felt gratitude, grateful for having witnessed something extraordinary. She knew she would remember this moment for a long time, a lesson in patience, observation, and respect. The teasing words she had spoken seemed so distant now, a reminder of how quickly impressions could change when faced with truth. She walked past him slowly, feeling a mix of emotions she had never expected to feel that morning. Her usual energy was tempered by a new awareness. She realized that teasing was fleeting, but talent, skill, and passion could leave a lasting impression. The students around her were still talking quietly, sharing their surprise and admiration. She felt connected to them in a new way, bound by the shared experience of witnessing something rare and beautiful. As she left the lobby, she glanced back at the piano and the janitor. He was back at his work, quietly moving through the space, as if nothing had happened. She smiled to herself, a smile that carried understanding and respect, a smile that had grown from the surprise and awe of a moment that had started with teasing and ended with wonder. She knew that the day had begun with a simple challenge, but it had turned into a lesson she would carry with her. Never underestimate someone, because everyone has a side of themselves that can surprise and inspire. The next day, the lobby was buzzing more than usual. Word had spread about the janitor and the piano, and students and staff found themselves watching more closely than before. She walked in, her usual playful grin on her face, but now it carried a hint of curiosity. Yesterday had surprised her, and she couldn't stop thinking about what she had witnessed. The janitor, who had always been quiet and unnoticed, had shown a talent that no one expected. She wanted to see more, not just out of mischief this time, but because she was genuinely intrigued. As she passed the janitor, she noticed him moving calmly, almost as if he was unaware of the growing attention. He was pushing a cart with cleaning supplies, but there was a quiet dignity in the way he carried himself. She decided to engage him again, but differently this time. Instead of teasing, she approached with a playful curiosity. "I didn't know you could play like that," she said, her voice softer than usual. The students nearby turned their heads, surprised at the change in tone. She had always been bold and teasing, but now there was respect in her words. The janitor looked up briefly, nodding, his expression calm. He didn't say much, as usual, but there was a small smile that suggested he appreciated the acknowledgement. She leaned against the railing near the piano, watching him work. Her mind wandered, trying to imagine how someone so quiet could hide such a powerful skill. The lobby seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something more to happen. She decided to push a little further, not with harsh words this time, but with a challenge that could be playful and meaningful. "Do you always play alone?" she asked, her eyes fixed on him. The janitor paused for a moment, then looked at her. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he finished the task he was doing, then moved toward the piano. The students around them sensed something was about to happen. The air was filled with anticipation. He sat down and let his fingers hover above the keys. This time, there was no hesitation, no soft warming up. The first note rang out clear and confident, catching everyone off guard. She watched closely, her curiosity growing. The music that came next was different from yesterday. It was playful, lively, and full of surprises, almost as if he was responding to her presence. Each note seemed intentional, almost teasing back in a way, but with skill that made it beautiful instead of mocking. She couldn't help but smile, realizing that the piano was not just an instrument for him, but a way to communicate. The music spoke without words, telling a story she was just beginning to understand. As he played, she felt the energy in the room shift. Students stopped their conversations and leaned closer. Teachers who passed by paused, curious about the sound that filled the lobby. The janitor's performance had a way of commanding attention without demanding it. She felt herself drawn in, not by the challenge this time, but by the beauty of the moment. Her usual teasing thoughts faded, replaced by admiration and wonder. She moved closer to the piano, careful not to interrupt, but wanting to be part of the experience. She noticed details she hadn't before. The way his fingers danced across the keys, the slight movements of his body as he felt the music, the way he seemed to breathe with the rhythm. Each note had emotion, each pause had meaning. It was as if he was telling a story, and she was the fortunate listener. She realized she wanted to understand him, to know what inspired this hidden talent. Her mind imagined the years of practice, the quiet moments when no one was watching, the dedication it must have taken. She felt respect growing inside her, a feeling she wasn't used to. Usually, she was the one commanding attention, making people react, but here was someone who could captivate without trying, who could command a room with nothing but skill and passion. The music changed, softer now, more introspective. She leaned back slightly, letting the sound wash over her. She noticed small reactions from the students around her. Some closed their eyes, some whispered to each other, but all were affected. Even she felt a sense of calm, as if the music had reached inside and stirred something she didn't expect. She thought about her own actions, her teasing words from yesterday, and felt a quiet sense of humility. It was a reminder that every person had layers, stories, and talents that might never be seen if one only looked at the surface. When he finished, there was silence for a moment, filled only by the fading resonance of the last note. Then, slowly, the lobby erupted in applause. She clapped with the others, but her eyes stayed on him. The janitor gave a small, almost shy nod again. There was no arrogance, no boastfulness, only quiet pride and satisfaction. She felt a strange sense of connection, as if this moment had shifted something inside her. The playful teasing had turned into genuine curiosity and respect. She decided to speak, this time not to challenge or provoke, but to understand. "You've been hiding this talent for a long time, haven't you?" she asked gently. He paused, then nodded slightly. There was a story in his eyes, something she couldn't yet read completely, but it spoke of patience, dedication, and perhaps a touch of solitude. She realized that his life had been full of quiet moments, practicing and perfecting, while the world went on without noticing. She felt a mix of admiration and empathy, understanding that talent often comes with its own sacrifices. The students around them seemed to sense the change as well. Some whispered to each other about how unexpected it was, how people could surprise you when you least expected it. The lobby, which had been a place of passing chatter and movement, felt alive with a new energy. It was a space transformed by music and the quiet presence of someone who had been overlooked. She felt lucky to witness it, realizing that these moments were rare and precious. She stayed a little longer, asking questions about how he learned, what inspired him, and what he enjoyed most about playing. He answered softly, each word deliberate and thoughtful. She noticed that he enjoyed being asked, that he liked sharing his experience in small doses. The playful teasing from yesterday had become a bridge to understanding, a way to connect rather than challenge. She realized that curiosity, when paired with respect, could open doors that teasing could never unlock. As the morning moved on, she helped him clean up around the piano, carrying a few supplies and chatting quietly. It was a simple act, but it felt meaningful. She realized that small gestures could strengthen connections, just as music could. The janitor seemed to appreciate the company, even if he didn't say much. The students around them began to return to their routines, but the air still carried the memory of the performance, a quiet reminder of something extraordinary happening in ordinary places. By the time she left the lobby, she felt changed. She had started the day with curiosity and playfulness, but she was leaving with understanding and respect. The janitor had shown her that people often carried hidden talents and stories, and that taking a moment to notice could reveal a world she hadn't imagined. She realized that teasing was fleeting, but genuine connection, curiosity, and recognition could leave lasting impressions. Walking down the hall, she reflected on the lessons of the morning. She thought about how easy it was to judge based on appearances, and how rare it was to see someone's true skill and passion. She felt a sense of responsibility to look closer, to appreciate, and to respect the quiet contributions of others. The janitor's music had not only captivated the lobby, but had opened a window into understanding, and she knew she would carry that lesson with her. The story of the janitor and the piano was spreading quietly, whispered among students and staff. She felt a sense of pride in being part of that story, in witnessing the talent and the transformation of her own perception. She understood that the world was full of hidden depths, and that sometimes all it took was a moment of attention and respect to reveal them. Her playful energy had found a new direction, one of curiosity and admiration rather than teasing and challenge, and she felt lighter and more thoughtful than she had in a long time. That afternoon, the lobby felt different. There was a quiet anticipation, as if the space itself remembered the music that had filled it the day before. She walked in, feeling a mixture of curiosity and excitement. She had already seen the janitor play twice, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to discover. Something about the way he moved and the ease with which he commanded the piano intrigued her. Today, she wanted to see him not just play, but reveal the depth of his talent. As she approached, she noticed the janitor arranging chairs in the lobby, preparing for some event she wasn't yet aware of. He glanced at her briefly but didn't stop working. She paused, studying him. There was a quiet dignity in the way he moved, a calm assurance that drew her attention. She felt a familiar urge to speak, to challenge, but she held back. She realized that teasing him yesterday had only scratched the surface. Today, she wanted to understand the music, to feel it, not to provoke a reaction. The students trickled in slowly, some noticing her, some just wandering by. They had heard whispers about yesterday's performance, and many were curious to see if it would happen again. She felt the lobby shift into an unusual energy, a sense of expectation that was different from normal school days. The janitor continued his preparations quietly, almost like he was setting a stage, though no one had announced anything. She felt herself leaning closer, watching every detail, wondering what would come next. He walked over to the piano, his movements deliberate and unhurried. She noticed his hands, calloused and strong, hovering over the keys. There was a moment of stillness, a pause that drew everyone's attention. She couldn't predict what he would play, only that it would be extraordinary. As he pressed the first key, the sound resonated through the lobby, soft yet full of emotion. Her eyes widened slightly. This was not just skill. It was a statement, a presence that filled the room without effort. The music began slowly, almost cautiously, but soon developed into a rich, flowing melody. She felt herself drawn into the sound, each note capturing her attention. It was as if the piano was speaking directly to her, telling a story without words. She noticed small details, the subtle shifts in tempo, the gentle crescendos, the moments of quiet pause that made the louder sections even more powerful. Every element of his playing seemed intentional, filled with understanding and depth. She moved closer to the piano, careful not to intrude but wanting to be near the source of this unexpected magic. The students nearby had stopped their usual chatter, their eyes fixed on him. Some were leaning forward, absorbed by the performance. The janitor seemed completely in his own world, eyes closed, body swaying slightly with the rhythm. His music was commanding attention not through volume, but through its sheer presence. She felt her usual confidence and energy shift into quiet awe. There was no room for teasing here. The music left her speechless. The melody changed, becoming more complex. She noticed the subtle nuances in his playing, the way he transitioned between notes and chords with ease and precision. It was clear he had spent years honing this skill, practicing in solitude, perfecting each movement. She thought about the dedication it must have taken, the quiet moments that no one had witnessed, and a sense of respect grew inside her. The playful teasing that had defined her interactions with people seemed trivial in comparison to the depth of talent she was seeing. She wondered about the stories behind each note, the emotions that had inspired this music. It was as if he was sharing a part of himself, a side of life that remained hidden from casual observers. She felt a connection to him through the piano, even without words. The music carried a message, one she could feel in her chest and her mind. She realized that moments like this were rare, moments where talent and passion revealed truths that ordinary life often concealed. The janitor's playing grew more expressive, the notes rising and falling in a dance of sound and emotion. She noticed how the students were reacting, some closing their eyes, some whispering quietly, but all captivated. She felt herself holding her breath at times, letting the music wash over her. It was not just entertainment. It was a lesson in patience, focus, and the power of quiet dedication. She began to understand that talent often existed in the most unexpected places, waiting for someone to notice. She watched the janitor's face as he played, noting the calm intensity in his expression. There was no effort in his movements, no signs of strain, only the natural flow of someone deeply connected to his craft. She realized that his talent was more than just skill. It was a way of communicating, a bridge between himself and the world. She felt a surge of admiration, not just for the music, but for the humility with which he shared it. He could have played for applause or attention, but he chose to play for the moment, for the joy of expression. The music softened now, becoming more introspective. She leaned back slightly, letting the notes fill the space around her. She noticed small reactions from those around her. Smiles, quiet sighs, eyes widening in surprise. The janitor had transformed the lobby from a place of ordinary routines into a space of wonder. She realized that she had underestimated him, as she had underestimated others in her life. There was a lesson here about appearances and assumptions, about the richness that could lie hidden beneath a quiet exterior. When he finished, the room seemed to exhale. There was a moment of silence, a pause that allowed everyone to reflect on what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, applause began, soft at first, then louder, filled with genuine appreciation. She clapped with the others, but her eyes never left him. The nod he gave in response was small, almost shy, yet it carried a quiet acknowledgement of the impact he had made. She felt a deep sense of respect, a recognition that true skill and passion could command attention without force or flamboyance. She approached him carefully, wanting to speak but unsure of what to say. "That was incredible," she finally managed, her voice soft. He looked at her briefly, then returned to his calm demeanor, nodding once. She realized that words were not necessary to convey the appreciation and understanding she felt. The music had spoken for itself, and it had reached everyone in the lobby, leaving a lasting impression. She stayed near the piano for a while, asking gentle questions about his music, his inspiration, and his practice. He responded quietly, each answer thoughtful and measured. She noticed that he enjoyed the conversation, even if he didn't show it openly. The teasing from the past 2 days had transformed into curiosity and admiration. She felt a sense of connection that surprised her. A bridge formed through music and shared attention. It was a rare and valuable moment, one that made her reflect on how she viewed others. The students began to return to their routines, but the lobby still felt alive with the memory of the music. She realized that extraordinary moments often happened quietly, without announcement, and that paying attention could reveal them. The janitor returned to his work, moving with the same quiet dignity as before, yet the atmosphere had shifted. She felt privileged to have witnessed it, understanding that talent and passion could change perceptions, inspire reflection, and leave lasting impressions. By the time she left the lobby, she felt a sense of wonder and humility. She had come to witness a performance, but she was leaving with a deeper understanding of people, of hidden talent, and of the power of quiet dedication. She knew that the janitor's music had not only captivated the students and staff, but had also changed her perspective. She felt lighter, more thoughtful, and more aware of the hidden layers in the people around her. It was a reminder that everyone had a story, a talent, and a depth that could surprise you if you only took the time to notice. The following day, the lobby had a quiet excitement to it, a subtle hum that could be felt in the steps of students and the shuffle of papers on the tables. She walked in, feeling that familiar mixture of curiosity and anticipation. Over the past few days, the janitor's music had become more than a spectacle. It had become a story that everyone quietly acknowledged. She had been drawn to it not out of mischief this time, but because she wanted to understand the depth of the man behind the piano. She saw him moving through the lobby, tending to his usual tasks. His calm presence seemed to command a subtle respect from everyone around him, though many still spoke in hushed tones, careful not to disturb him. She approached slowly, thinking about what she had learned from the past performances. There was more to him than she had imagined, and she felt a desire to connect with that hidden side. She knew she could not tease him now. The moment called for a different kind of engagement. "Will you play again today?" she asked softly, almost hesitant. The janitor looked at her briefly, then nodded slightly. There was no need for words. The understanding was mutual. He moved toward the piano with the same deliberate grace as before, and she felt a sense of anticipation ripple through the space. Students who had gathered nearby seemed to sense it too, forming a loose circle, waiting for what was about to unfold. He sat down at the piano and allowed his fingers to hover over the keys. For a moment, silence fell, thick and expectant. Then he pressed the first note, soft and clear. She felt a shiver of anticipation run through her. The melody that followed was rich and layered, more complex than anything she had heard from him before. There was a depth in the music that reached into her chest, tugging at feelings she hadn't expected. She leaned forward, her usual bold energy tempered by awe. The music was both playful and solemn, a delicate balance that captured attention effortlessly. She watched his fingers move across the keys, noting how each motion seemed to tell a story. There was a rhythm in the way he played, a natural ebb and flow that made every note meaningful. She realized that this was not just a performance. It was a conversation, a sharing of emotions that transcended words. She felt herself drawn into the narrative he was creating, caught in the subtle shifts of melody and tempo. The students around her were equally captivated. Some had their eyes closed, letting the music wash over them. Others whispered quietly, sharing their reactions with each other. She noticed the intensity in their expressions, the way the music had changed the usual atmosphere of the lobby into something almost sacred. It was a shared experience, a connection formed not by speech but by the language of sound. She felt a sense of unity with them, a recognition that they were witnessing something rare and profound. As the melody developed, she noticed a shift in the janitor's expression. There was a quiet intensity, a focus that suggested he was lost in the story he was telling. She realized that the music was more than technique. It was an extension of himself, a way to reveal emotions and thoughts he might never speak aloud. The playful teasing of the past seemed far away now, replaced by a sense of admiration and respect. She felt a humility settle over her, a recognition that talent, when paired with passion and dedication, could transform ordinary spaces into something extraordinary. She took a step closer, careful not to disturb him, wanting to see the subtle movements that brought the music to life. She noticed how his body shifted with the rhythm, how his breathing seemed to sync with the rise and fall of each note. There was an artistry in every motion, a mastery that went beyond simple practice. She understood now that the true impact of his performance came not from the sound alone, but from the way he connected with it, allowed it to flow through him naturally. The music became more dramatic, the notes building and intertwining in a way that suggested a story of conflict and resolution. She felt her heart race slightly, caught in the emotional tide he was creating. She could sense the quiet struggles behind the music, the moments of triumph and reflection that were hidden in each phrase. It was as if he was revealing a side of life that most people never saw, the quiet resilience and beauty found in dedication and patience. She felt inspired, touched in a way that words could not fully express. When the final note lingered and faded, the lobby remained still for a long moment, as if the air itself had been holding its breath. Then, slowly, applause began, soft at first and then swelling with genuine appreciation. She joined in, her hands meeting with those around her, but her eyes never left him. He nodded slightly, the same humble acknowledgement as before, and she felt a deep respect for the quiet confidence he carried. She realized that this moment had changed her perception, not just of him, but of how she viewed others. She approached the piano cautiously, wanting to speak but mindful of the sanctity of the moment. "That was beautiful," she said quietly. He looked at her, and there was a small smile, subtle but sincere. She felt a warmth of connection, an understanding that transcended the need for words. The teasing and playful energy she had brought with her days ago had transformed into genuine admiration and respect. She felt grateful for the chance to witness his talent, to see the depth of his skill and the passion behind it. They stayed near the piano for a while, talking softly. She asked questions about his practice, about what inspired the melodies, about how he had discovered his talent. His answers were measured and thoughtful, revealing glimpses of a life dedicated to quiet mastery. She realized that the janitor's story was not just about music. It was about patience, resilience, and the hidden strengths that people carry. She felt a sense of responsibility to carry this understanding with her, to look beyond appearances and appreciate the quiet gifts in others. The students gradually returned to their routines, but the atmosphere in the lobby had shifted permanently. There was a sense of reverence, a recognition that something extraordinary had been shared. She felt changed, lighter and more thoughtful, aware that the world held more depth than she had often assumed. The janitor returned to his work, moving calmly and confidently, yet the memory of the music lingered in the air like an invisible thread connecting everyone who had listened. As she left the lobby, she reflected on what she had witnessed. She realized that teasing and mischief could be fleeting, but true talent and quiet dedication could leave lasting impressions. The janitor had taught her a lesson not with words, but with action, with music that spoke to the soul. She felt a renewed curiosity and appreciation for the people around her, understanding that everyone carried hidden strengths and stories waiting to be discovered. That day, she left with a sense of awe, knowing that the ordinary world held extraordinary moments if one only took the time to notice them. By the final day, the lobby had become a place of quiet reverence, a spot where people paused to listen, watch, and feel. She entered with a sense of anticipation, a feeling that today would be different from any of the previous days. Over the past several encounters, the janitor's music had transformed her understanding of talent, patience, and quiet dedication. Today, she wanted to fully connect with what he had been sharing, to see the full impact of his presence. She noticed him moving slowly through the lobby, carrying a small dustpan and brush. He seemed unaware of the attention gathering around him, focused instead on his task. She felt a tug of respect and admiration for how humble he remained, even after so many had witnessed his extraordinary skill. She walked closer, wanting to be near him but careful not to interrupt. There was a subtle energy in the room, a sense of expectation that could be felt even in the quietest corners. "Will you play for us one more time?" she asked softly. The janitor paused and looked at her, a small nod confirming he would. There was no fanfare, no announcement. He simply moved toward the piano, the familiarity of his actions reassuring and commanding at the same time. The students and staff around them instinctively grew quiet, sensing that something special was about to unfold once again. He sat down and placed his hands over the keys, and for a brief moment, everything was still. Then, a single note sounded, clear and resonant. She felt her chest tighten with anticipation. As he played, the music grew richer and more expressive, each note telling a story, revealing emotion, and captivating the listeners. The playful teasing from days ago felt distant and insignificant compared to the depth of what was happening now. She felt herself absorbed in the narrative of sound, understanding that this was more than performance. It was communication without words. The melody shifted, soft and tender, carrying a feeling of reflection and humility. She watched his hands, noticing how naturally they moved over the keys, how each gesture was intentional yet effortless. She felt the emotions the music conveyed, the quiet joys, the hidden struggles, and the unwavering patience that had shaped him. It was as if he had opened a window into his soul, sharing a lifetime of dedication in a few minutes of sound. She felt moved, humbled by the simplicity and complexity intertwined in his playing. Around her, the students reacted in quiet awe, some closing their eyes, others exchanging whispers of admiration. She noticed the unspoken respect that had grown for him in the past days, and she felt connected to it, a shared recognition of something rare and meaningful. She thought about how easy it had been to underestimate him at first, and how much she had learned simply by observing, listening, and paying attention. As the music continued, she realized that the janitor's playing was more than a display of skill. It was an expression of life itself, the patience, perseverance, and quiet resilience that often went unnoticed. She felt a deep admiration for the humility and generosity in sharing such a gift without seeking recognition or praise. The teasing and playful energy she had brought with her initially had transformed completely into respect, gratitude, and reflection. The melody grew stronger, more passionate, building in layers of sound that resonated through the entire lobby. She noticed how the students and staff were responding, some leaning forward, captivated, some holding their breath at the crescendos, some letting the softer passages move them. She felt a connection not only with the music but with everyone experiencing it alongside her. The janitor had created a shared moment, a collective memory that transcended ordinary interactions. She took a step closer to the piano, her eyes tracing the movements of his fingers, the subtle shifts of his body, and the way he seemed completely immersed in the music. Each note seemed to have purpose, each pause seemed deliberate, carrying meaning beyond the sound. She felt a sense of clarity and understanding, realizing that talent and dedication often remained hidden until someone took the time to notice. The janitor's performance had not only revealed his own story but had also changed the way she saw the world. The music softened once more, gentle and introspective, carrying a feeling of resolution and calm. She noticed small details, the way his hands lingered on certain keys, the subtle breaths he took, the slight movements of his body as he felt the rhythm. It was as if he was speaking directly to her, to everyone in the room, sharing wisdom and emotion that words could never fully capture. She felt an overwhelming sense of appreciation for the moment, for the music, and for the person behind it. When the final note faded, silence filled the room, a reverent pause that allowed everyone to absorb what had just transpired. Then, applause began, soft at first, then growing louder as the realization of the performance's impact spread. She clapped along, but her eyes never left him. The small, humble nod he gave in response carried more meaning than words ever could. She felt a deep sense of respect, a recognition of the quiet confidence and mastery he displayed. She approached him once the applause subsided, her voice gentle and sincere. "Thank you for sharing this with us," she said. He looked at her, a faint smile crossing his face, acknowledging the gratitude without any need for words. She realized that this moment had changed her, not only in how she viewed him, but in how she viewed people in general. She had learned that everyone carried hidden depths and talents, and that noticing and respecting them could create powerful connections. They spent a few minutes talking, the conversation soft and thoughtful. She asked questions about his music, about what inspired him, about the years of practice and dedication. He answered calmly, each response measured and meaningful, revealing glimpses of a life full of quiet commitment. She understood that his talent was intertwined with humility and patience, and she felt a sense of admiration and wonder that went beyond the music itself. The students gradually returned to their usual routines, but the lobby retained the energy of the shared experience. It was a space transformed, filled with the echoes of music and the presence of someone extraordinary. She realized that moments like this were rare and precious, and that witnessing them required openness, curiosity, and attention. She felt grateful for having been part of the story, for the lessons it had taught her about people, talent, and respect. As she left the lobby for the final time, she reflected on the journey of the past days. What had begun as playful teasing had transformed into genuine curiosity, admiration, and understanding. The janitor had revealed more than his musical skill. He had shown patience, humility, and the quiet power of dedication. She carried these lessons with her, feeling lighter, more thoughtful, and more aware of the hidden potential in the people around her. Walking down the hall, she thought about how easy it had been to misjudge others and how rewarding it could be to take the time to truly see them. The janitor's music had been a reminder that extraordinary moments often existed in ordinary places, waiting for someone to notice. She knew that she would remember this experience forever, a lesson in patience, respect, and the beauty of hidden talent. The story of the janitor and the piano would remain with her, shaping the way she approached people, interactions, and life itself. She smiled, feeling a quiet contentment, knowing that sometimes the most remarkable lessons came not from words, but from music and the presence of someone who had mastered it quietly, with humility and grace.